More than any other time in history, the 20th century revolutionized how we live our lives. Powered by cheap, plentiful energy and seemingly unlimited natural resources, the Industrial Revolution went into overdrive. The innovations that followed changed our homes, our workplaces, how we travelled, and even how we communicated. And for much of this time, the only cost we had to consider was the one on the price tag.
But in recent decades, all that changed.
The fossil fuels that drove this revolution are now driving climate change. We ran out of landfill for our waste. And the seemingly unlimited natural resources, they started to run out too. But do dwindling resources and environmental destruction mean we have to abandon the progress of the last century? What if there was another way?
What if there's another type of economy? One that protects not just our environment, but our way of life.
Our throwaway culture results in 13 million tonnes of waste annually just in Ireland. That's 13 million tonnes of what were once valuable raw materials. But with the climate crisis worsening and biodiversity loss accelerating, can we still afford to ignore the environmental destruction and resource scarcity this system causes? To find out more, I'm meeting sustainability expert Dr. Geraldine Brennan.
So, Geraldine, tell me, what is our current economy model at the moment?
Our current economy is referred to as a linear economy, and what that means is it's a one-way economy. We extract resources from the ground, manufacturers turn those resources into components and products, they sell them through shops and e-commerce platforms to people like you and I. We use them, and then when we're done with them, this is where I guess the crux of the matter is, they end up being discarded, potentially in landfill.
But this is the way we've always worked it, Geraldine. I don't see why it's such a big problem now.
I hear you. I think the issue is the fact that the linear economy stems from the Industrial Revolution and the mass production of goods. And the reason it's a problem is because of the scale-up of all these processes and the fact that when you extract raw materials, it impacts ecosystems. There's significant biodiversity loss, there's significant stress on water, fresh water in the areas that you're extracting these raw materials. And ultimately, this all contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. So effectively, the warming of our climate, the sea rise, the impact of availability of fresh water. And the thing is, back when the Industrial Revolution was starting, we didn't know that our extraction, our manufacturing processes, and ultimately discarding products in landfill was having these negative impacts. But now we do know.
So if we don't want the linear economy, then what kind of economy do we want?
So we want an economy where we keep materials, so things like packaging, components, the parts of a phone, and the products themselves in use in the economy by someone. The circular economy piece is about this cycle. Instead of it being a linear one-way economy where you make a product, you use it, and it ends up as waste, the product comes back into the economy to be used by someone else.
So the whole thing is a circle, rather than a straight line, rather than a one-way street, it all feeds back in.
Exactly.
Okay, it sounds like it makes a lot more sense. So what would a circular economy look like in practice? On Dublin's north side, there's a centre there that's dedicated to this new economic model. And I'm on my way there now to find out.
With the support of the Environmental Protection Agency, Dublin City Council and the government, the Ballymun Rediscovery Centre has been in operation since 2005. And I'm here to meet Chief Executive Dr Sarah Miller.
Sarah, tell me a bit about the Rediscovery Centre.
So we started off as a small environmental organisation working in Ballymun as part of the regeneration project. But our centre here has been open since 2017, and that's when we brought all of our operations and all of our programmes together under one space.
The building doesn't quite look like it's been around since 2017, more like 1817. Tell me about this building.
Yeah, well, look, it's a really iconic building for Ballymun. It was the old Ballymun boiler house. So it used to provide all the heating and the hot water for the tower blocks when they were here. And then it was due to be demolished as part of the regeneration programme. We started looking at opportunities, how we could reuse the building. We were able to build this fantastic demonstration centre for the circular economy.
Sarah, as gorgeous as the outside is, I'm dying to see what's going on the inside.
Let's go in.
Okay, perfect. So what does the circular economy mean then on a practical level?
Yeah, so there are three main principles of the circular economy. So the first one is that we design out waste. So you're designing out waste and designing out pollution. The second one is that you try to keep materials in circulation for as long as possible. And the third is that you use renewable or regenerative systems.
So that's the real key, isn't it? The real key is to look early, to look before things even hit the market.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's about looking at eco-design. So how can we produce our products more sustainably? How can we make sure that the manufacturing processes have a low environmental impact? And how can we make sure then, yes, at the end of the life, that they can be reused, repaired, recycled?
Sarah, tell me a bit about what you do here in the Rediscover Centre.
So we're the National Centre for the Circular Economy, and the whole idea of, I suppose, our organisation is to bring people, ideas and resources together so that we can support a transition to the circular economy. So we try to demonstrate what a circular economy might look like, and showing and demonstrating how we can make materials last longer and how we can get the most from the materials that we have in circulation at the moment. First one here, we have rediscovered fashion.
Ah, okay. Look at that.
Yeah, I'll take you on down here. We have rediscovered cycling.
Wow. Hi, how are you? This is amazing.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, I suppose we are educating and training people, providing skills for the new circular economies, how to use a sewing machine, how to get back to repairing, clothing, how to live more sustainable lives. And that's part of, the whole ethos of the Rediscovery Centre, is to inspire more sustainable living. So this is rediscovered furniture.
Oh, wow, this is great.
And Dave's working on some chairs. These actually just got dropped in this morning.
Oh, really? Oh, where would they have gone if they didn't come in here?
Well, they would have ended up in landfill.
Oh, God. Thank you, Dave. That's great. So in theory, almost everything in here would have ended up in landfill?
So yeah, pretty much everything here that's for sale would have ended up in landfill had we not reused it, repaired it, or turned it into something else.
Everything about this near-zero energy building is an example of sustainability. Harvested rainwater flushes the toilets. Compost helps grow fresh food. And in the upcycling centre, furniture, clothes, bikes and paints are saved from landfill to be repurposed and given new life. But before I leave the centre, I want to speak to fashion designer Aaron Murphy. Aaron had her own fashion label, but concerned with the waste and pollution in the industry, she now works in the Rediscovery Centre with materials and clothing once destined for landfill. When we think of emissions and pollution, most will think of heavy industry and factories, but how many of us think of runways and the fashion industry? In recent years, a new trend called fast fashion has rapidly become one of the world's most polluting industries. Something fashion designer Aaron Murphy knows about more than most.
It's a classic example of the linear economy, which is basically extracting raw materials, using them and then dumping them. So over half of the fast fashion that's bought ends up in landfill within a year. Even though we're buying more and more, we're actually using the clothing that we're buying less and less.
What do you think has driven this over the last 30 years?
With the kind of increased production, the prices have dropped a great deal, and that's kind of caused a kind of erosion of the value that people hold for for clothing items, and it makes it easier to just throw. If something's been bought for very cheap, it's not worth that much, you know, so it's easy to throw it away. In the EU, we're creating 2 million tonnes a year of textile waste. A good deal of it gets shipped to sub-Saharan Africa, countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and more of it is ending up in landfill there. And it's kind of like almost exporting the problem somewhere else, you know. There's waste and environmental impact at the very beginning as well, with the amount of raw materials it's extracting, the amount of water consumption. It takes 2,700 litres of water to make one T-shirt.
So if I wanted one T-shirt, it would take nearly 3,000 litres of water. It would have to be shipped probably from somewhere like Bangladesh. It comes to me here, I may never wear it, and then it probably ends up in landfill in Africa.
And it is leading to the fashion industry being responsible for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions.
10% of greenhouse gas emissions around the entire world?
Yeah.
In the
globally,
fashion industry?
Yeah.
That's more than all of the air travel, all of the freight. That's insane.
Yeah.
When it's such a big problem, fast fashion, and it's so damaging to the environment, what are the alternatives? How do we start to combat this?
Repairing, reusing, donating to charity, getting involved in swapping events. Ultimately, the idea is to buy less and to use less. But if we're kind of making more conscious choices about what we are buying, you know, thinking about their afterlife after you've stopped using it, what could it be? Could it be changed into something else? And I think these issues are going to become more and more important as we go forward.
The volume of resources, water and energy that are consumed by this one industry is difficult to comprehend. But is fast fashion the norm? Or have other industries found a way to tackle their waste and environmental impact? Extract, manufacture, transport, consume and dispose. Our economies are a straight line, from mines on one side of the world to landfills on the other. And valuable resources, like plastics and aluminium that have shaped our modern world, are routinely dumped or incinerated. What's worse, these materials that are so toxic to manufacture are often easy to recycle and reuse. And one of the worst examples of this waste, electronics. Or at least it was, until just a few years ago. In 2004, the WEEE directive came into law and revolutionised how electronics are recycled. So I'm in Offaly to see it in action. So Elizabeth, tell me a little bit about where we are.
So today we're in KMK Metal Recycling. We're standing in front of a huge pile of mixed WEEE materials, about 200 tonnes here. And KMK Metals are one of our recycling partners for WEEE Ireland. We're the national scheme. We take back waste electrical equipment from all around the country on behalf of producers of electrical equipment and batteries. And what you can see here is the start of a multi-stage process for recycling all of this material right here in Tullamore.
This is absolutely amazing. So this is 200 tonnes, did you say?
This is about a week's worth of collections from recycling centres, from electrical retailers, public collection events.
This only represents a week of what we've recycled.
That's right. So last year WEEE Ireland recycled 36,000 tonnes of electrical equipment. And the small mixed WEEE, which is what we're standing in front of, we did about 10 million units. So any of those kettles or toasters that broke on you last year, if you put them in the recycling bin, this is where they ended up.
How much of our electrical goods are actually recycled at the end?
We have to get back, as a country, 65% of what we place in the market, and we measure that by weight. And we know for the household electrical equipment, and we're standing in front of an awful lot of it, that we're over 60% now.
Elizabeth, this is a brilliant system and it's clearly working. Can a model like this be rolled out across other types of recycling?
Well, the Producer Responsibility Initiative for the WEEE system in Ireland had a really strong directive to work under, and it was transposed in a way that allowed us to maximise what we do here in Ireland and do
do really well. So we worked with all of the other stakeholders in the supply chain, whether that was the retailers, whether that was local authorities, and people have really embraced the idea of bringing waste electrical equipment back to their retailers, putting batteries in battery boxes, and attending events and clearing out your house of that waste. I think we've built a lot of trust in the system as well, and the high quality standards we have helped us to show people what happens to their waste and that it gets managed and recycled here in Ireland in the main.
How did you get your message out there so emphatically?
Well, on day one, we had visible environmental management costs on products. So that really highlighted to people that there was a solution at the end of life for their old washing machine when they were buying a new one. And again, the like-for-like take-back very much engaged people at that point of purchase. So they were able to know that when you bought a new item and you could bring it back to the retailer, there was a solution there, and that you were tied into the supply chain that you're a part of when you buy your items. We've, of course, had to push an awful lot of information campaigns, and we can never stop, and we're always looking at new ways to advertise and promote what we do. The easier it is for people to recycle, and they visibly know what's happening at the end of that recycling chain, they're the success points I think we're really keen to talk about.
The WEEE directive is a remarkable success. And even though the EU target is only 65%, it's a great example of how both manufacturers and consumers can play a role in a circular economy. But with so few products designed to last or even be repaired, should we be asking more of manufacturers? We've made a lot of progress here in Ireland, and we've seen a lot of wonderful projects and initiatives, but I can't help but think they only scratch the surface. And I think we have a much bigger problem that needs a much bigger solution. So I'm here in Cork to talk to somebody about what that solution just might look like. Designer and circular economy expert Dr Frank O'Connor has been asking the same question for decades, and I'm in Cork to learn more.
Circular economy to me is about managing our resources in a much more sustainable and responsible way. The idea of circular economy is you go away from the idea of single use for products. Waste is just a design flaw, you know. We shouldn't have any waste in the first place.
Frank, it feels like some products are designed to actually stop working very, very quickly. What is this?
That's definitely the case. A lot of products are designed for obsolescence. They're designed to fail after a period of time. That could be software issues, could be access to components, difficult to repair, difficult to maintain. So from a company point of view, that's made a lot more sense financially. They can make a lot more profit. If we go back in Ireland in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, a lot of products were designed for a longer lifespan then. And also we had a stronger interest in repair. I guess we all remember our shoes being repaired or our clothes being repaired when we were growing up. So it's a relatively new phenomenon to a certain extent.
Frank, tell me, how important is design in the longevity of products?
Design determines 80% of the environmental costs, 90% of the manufacturing costs are determined at the design stage, and 40% of the material costs. So the design stage you can decide what materials to choose, what the construction of the product is, and can the product be repairable. So the key aspect is how you bring the design with the business model. So I could design a product to be repaired, but my business model mightn't support that. 2 years later, you're looking for the parts, and you can't get the parts because I haven't provided that service. So design goes hand in hand with the business model. And I think if you think of that as being good design and good business practice, how is it a good design? If you design it for a single life, if it's thrown away after 9 months, how is that a good design?
What's going to happen to the companies that don't move towards a circular economy and towards circularity?
They won't be able to survive, they won't be able to trade globally, they won't be able to access the materials that they need. What they'll find is that citizens will expect more. There was a study done recently by IBEC which found that basically half of companies in Ireland didn't know what a circular economy was. I mean, that's very, very concerning. And given that over half of our emissions targets can be achieved through getting a circular economy in Ireland, then obviously it's a lost opportunity.
It's strange to discover, but the biggest obstacle to having a truly circular economy is an artificial one that was designed. In the rush to make and sell more, we've made it easier to dispose of valuable resources than reuse them.
So what does that mean for us? What will a circular economy mean for consumers and for businesses?
A new agency, Circulaire, in partnership with the EPA and Department for the Environment, was set up to answer these very questions. And I'm back in Dunleary to speak with their programme manager, Dr Geraldine Brennan.
What we do is basically support Irish industry to demystify concepts or technologies to help improve their competitive advantage. And effectively what this is a network of companies who are trying to understand what the circular economy means for their business and start on the journey from this linear business model towards a circular economy model, thinking about what it will mean for their customers, thinking about what it will mean for their production.
And what about companies that aren't interested in the cost saving of the environment? Is there any legislation coming down the line to ensure a circular economy comes into being?
So there is. It's part of the European Green Deal, which means that there is policy coming from Europe to member states to say that you have to embed recycling, repair, reuse into how you ultimately manage resources in your economy. 45% of greenhouse gas emissions is associated with products and the materials extraction. So you have a lot of policy drivers coming down the line.
How important is it that we do take action soon?
For businesses, there's an opportunity to become a front runner potentially in terms of understanding what this means for your business, so you're ahead of that need for compliance. And the circular economy is estimated to be over a €2 billion opportunity every year in the economy.
There's a €2 billion opportunity?
Yes. It's kind of like a way of rethinking how we make things, but it has cost savings and benefits as a result, because you don't need to use virgin materials, which therefore means you're reducing the cost of making a product because you're getting it for potentially cheaper if it's a recycled or a secondary raw material.
So you're reducing the cost in terms of financial implications, but presumably then also reducing the cost to the environment as well.
Absolutely.
Geraldine, is this not going to make it harder again for consumers? People are going to potentially have to pay more and more for items that are maybe better value, but maybe they just cost more.
Not necessarily, and I suppose this is the good news story about the circular economy. Say, for example, a drill. Instead of necessarily buying a very cheap drill that you use for a weekend of DIY and then it sits in your cupboard, if you rent it from the manufacturer, they could take it back, repair it, make it like new, and then rent it to someone else. And that rental price could actually give access to certain high quality products to people who couldn't afford to buy the product outright. So this whole idea of access to goods versus ownership doesn't mean that we won't ever own things, but we don't have to own them in order to use goods and products that are high quality and designed to last.
– 2020 was tied for warmest year on record. And it was also the year that researchers found plastics in the snow falling on the top of Mount Everest. For centuries, the pollution, emissions and waste of our system was ignored or written off as what economists call externalities. But these are no longer externalities that we can ignore. On a finite planet, there are limits, and we are rapidly starting to reach them. While it's impossible to underestimate the challenges facing us now, it's encouraging to know that there is an alternative.
And just as we designed the linear economy, we can design this one too. An economy that protects not just our natural world, but our way of life. A circular one.